So while writing your script, you might have some process, that you go through, that how you're going to figure out the whole conversation, how many conversational turns, how you're going to, flow off the user in some manner. Like, what is your process?
Hmm. So once we've arrived at a use case, so there's a whole bunch of things that we'll do prior to deciding what it is that we're going to create. There's a guy called Ben Sauer who's a product strategist over here in the UK, and we've had him on the podcast before. One of the things that he said that's always stuck with me is that the first stage of any project is figuring out how to design the right thing. And then the second phase of any project is working out how you design the thing right. And so what you're kind of asking is, how do you design the thing right? How do you design the dialogue? And so there's a whole phase before that, which is around assessing the use case, prioritizing the use case, finding what a use case should be in the first place, validating it, all that kind of stuff. But once you've got to a point where you've got a use case that you think is a priority and that you do think will meet a business need and a user need, the first pass dialogue design we'll always do as a live table read. So before we write any line of dialogue, and it depends on the client. I mean, sometimes, if we're working on something like an IVR bot that's going to be in a phone line, then the first thing we would do is we'd be looking at reviewing all of the calls or not all of them, but a sample of calls that have come through already that are related to this use case. And we'll review the dialogue, the back and forth. We'll understand, we'll try and figure out whether there's any patterns. Failing that, or as well as that actually as well, is we'll do a live read. So we'll understand, first of all, we need to understand what the user needs from this thing and what the bot needs from this thing. So for example, in a restaurant, I'll use the restaurant one again. Let's say that you've got a table reservation bot, right? The bot needs some certain information from the user in order for it to be useful at all. It needs to know what time, potentially if it's a chain, which location, how many people are going to be coming, and that's maybe some other things as well. But those are the fundamental, any dietary requirements potentially. But fundamentals are what time, what location, how many people, and what date. Date's an important one, otherwise it could be any time. And so those are the bot needs. Those are the things that we know the bot needs to have. The user is going to have needs as well. So one need might be to leave that thing having booked a table, which is fine. But the user might also have other needs that are not necessarily related to the needs of the bot. So for example, one of the needs might be the thing I mentioned earlier, which is close. So I might want to know what time you close before I can book a table, because I want to book it as late as I can, but I don't want to be there while you shut something. The other thing a user might need is how long is it going to take me to get to your place? That might be another need. Another need might be, what are your dietary requirements? Do you have vegan food? Stuff like that. And so we assemble prioritized user needs and fundamental bot needs, prioritized bot needs. And once you've got those two things together, you'd do a bit of a role playing exercise. One person is going to be the user. I can't believe it's sunny. I'm going to have to take this jumper off. One person would be the user. I've realised while my dog's barking, by the way, we've had a guy downstairs looking at the bathroom, quoting us for doing our bathroom out, and he doesn't really like strangers, and so my wife, I think, has put him up here while the guy's downstairs in the bathroom. So excuse the crying dog noises.
No issues.
He's very anxious. So once we've got the user needs and we've got the bot needs, we'll give one person a sheet of paper which will say, you need to get these things out of this conversation. We'll give the other person the sheet of paper which has got the bot needs on it, and we'll say, you need to get this out of this conversation. And that's the only thing we'll do. That's the only preparation that we'll do. We won't, in this instance, bother with the persona. We won't try and get the bot to act in the persona. That's all stuff we'll figure out later. We just want to get the interaction sorted. And so if it's in person, we'll actually sit people back to back. So we'll sit two chairs facing the opposite ways. Two people sit there. One's the bot, one's the user. If it's virtual, we'll do the same kind of thing, but we'll turn the cameras off. And so, because the body language and the cues can kind of give across hints and stuff like that, we want to be able to just have this conversation in an audio first medium. So we'll turn the cameras off. And then we'll just do that read. We'll just say, okay, well, starting from go, one person initiates the conversation, and then we'll see how it plays out. If we're doing it like this, we'll just record it. We'll transcribe it in Otter or something like that, and then we'll get the transcription. We'll do that a number of times. And the first few times you do that, you'll work out straight away where the kinks are. you'll straight away understand that this person was confused by that response, and so we need to think about the second prompt needs to be written in a way that is really clear, and then we'll redo the role play and we'll try it again, and we'll keep going until we get to a point where we can get through the conversation seamlessly, and then that ends up being the first pass at our script. And that is there's a designer called Coppen, and one of her phrases, which I also like, I just quote other people most of the time. one of her phrases that I really like is that you can't design conversations without having conversations, and I think that's a really, really good thing to have in your mind. Is that if you're sitting down and you're designing a bot and you haven't spoken to anybody else about how that conversation might go first, I would advise just to pause and go away and try and see, even if it's a partner, a friend, your child, whoever it is, have another human on the other end of it, because the difficulty of conversation design, as opposed to web design or chatbot design, if you're falling back on buttons before you've even bothered designing an actual conversation, is that with visual design, you can constrain what people can do. You can constrain the only thing you can do on this page is click that button or click that menu, and that's it. You provide the boundaries, and there's only so much real estate that you can have on a screen, and so you can nest things and you can hide things and all that kind of stuff, and you don't really need the other person to create a first kind of pass, because we've got design patterns already sorted for the web. Everyone knows what a hamburger menu is. Everybody knows how a search bar works. Everyone knows what a button looks like and how you can get to the button and click it. And so all those patterns are being worked out. And so there isn't a huge amount to learn, apart from you want to do your usability testing and stuff like that, obviously, but conceptually and fundamentally, you're starting with a toolkit that is already understood. With voice, a designer, or with conversations, a designer is only ever designing half of the interaction. You're only ever designing the responses, because what you get back is entirely dependent on the person that stood in front of you. And with 7 billion people on the planet, the responses might be varied depending on who the person is. And so you're better off starting having an actual conversation first, get the first few passes of dialogue down, then you know that you're starting in a natural place. You know that you're starting in the right place. If you turn it into a chat bot and it's not a voice bot, and you do introduce the buttons and the chips on Google Assistant and the prompts, that's fine. But those are going to be aligned to the responses that that a normal human would be expecting to have. And so that's the first thing that we would do, is we would have real conversations, transcribe real conversations, or listen to real conversations and transcribe those, work out the first pass of the design, and then we'll work that into a prototype. We'll then start testing that prototype, and we'll make sure that our assumptions are correct and that we've got the pattern sorted. Then you start picking up on, when you start testing it a bit more broadly, you start picking up on the kind of utterances that people would say, in different ways that they would phrase things, or different questions actually that an edge case might have throughout. So for example, in that restaurant example, 80% of people might just go there, book a table and leave, but 10% or 20% or 5% might at one point ask, do you do vegan food? And then you're all of a sudden able to start gathering your requirements. So you can gather your requirements in an emerging fashion, starting with the basics of a conversation, prototyping and testing, and then you start gathering in-context requirements based on the real needs of real users at the time, rather than wasting a whole load of time coming up with a load of ideas and writing a massive backlog and speccing out a huge backlog to start working on features that you have zero idea whether they're going to provide any value or zero idea whether they're going to have any use at any position in the experience. Yeah, and so that's the beginning, and then it becomes about iteration. It becomes about wrapping the personality around it. It becomes about thinking about whether you want sound design, to play a part in that. And so once someone's booked a table, maybe you have, I don't know, the sound of a cash register, or if someone's made a purchase, the sound of a cash register. If someone's booked a table, the sound of a oven getting fired up, or something similar to that. And try and see where you can augment the audio experience, the vocal element to it with audio as well. And so all those things come further down the line once you've figured out how the conversation should go, and you've figured out what other additional requirements might add benefit to users.
Great.